We thank you so much for watching Law School Made Easy at Law School Made Easy 256. We thank you for subscribing and sharing our videos. Today, we want to look at Buganda agreement, and particularly the question how to answer Buganda agreement in an exam. That how are you supposed to answer the topic? Because in first year, first semester, this is a must write about topic in the examination. It will somehow surface in your exams. So let us straight go into the Buganda agreement. Members, it is very important for us to note that the Buganda agreement was signed. You begin by defining what Buganda agreement is. This was a document, and by far this was the first legal document in Uganda. Remember, this is a constitutional history paper. So this was the first legal document in Uganda to be signed between Buganda and the British government, or the protector, the British government of Her Majesty the Queen. Now, you go ahead and tell us who participated in the signing. If it is Buganda, then you say it was the king of Buganda, who was by then younger Chua. But we know that he was represented by the legends who included Nuwambogo, Zakaria Kisingiri, Apollo Kagwa, and members note, the other members who signed the agreement were the chiefs of the different counties in Buganda. They were part of the agreement. The chiefs were part of the agreement. For example, the chief of Wudu, the chief of Kochi, and all those other chiefs were part and partial of that agreement. Then you now tell us on the side of the British, who represented them is Sir Harry Johnson. Now, after you have discussed that in your introduction, you now go ahead and tell us the reason why this agreement was signed. You don't just jump to the articles. You now explain why was the agreement signed, and among them is that the British had wanted to establish their rule in the protectorate. So what they did was to start by signing the agreement with the strongest of all, which was Buganda, the Buganda region, and also its strategic location. And number three, the missionaries who had come earlier, when they went back to Europe, they recommended Buganda, and therefore that is why they opted to sign the agreement with Buganda. So, but it is also very important, I missed this one, to also tell us that how did the British get Buganda? Through the scramble and partition of Africa as the first thing. That is how we have the British and the Buganda signing the agreement, because British in 1894 had gotten Uganda as its colony. Then from there, you begin now to explain the articles. So I'm going to explain some of the articles. How are you supposed to write about these articles? Number one, Article 1 says that there will be demarcation of boundaries. That the British said, let us demarcate the boundaries of Uganda. So what the examiner expects out of you is to mention the article Uganda. After you have mentioned the article that there shall be the demarcation of boundaries, then you explain why was this particular Article 1, the demarcation of boundaries, why was it signed? You say the British wanted to stop Buganda's expansionist theory. Remember, King Mwanga and others had embarked on a program of expanding Buganda to other regions. Then from there, you now say also for easy administration. Now, after you discussing for easy administration, you now write and say that this Article 1 of Buganda could have led to the formation of Article 177 in the Constitution. Why? This paper is called Constitutional History. In simple terms, we are tracing the history of our Constitution, the Constitution which we have today. We are tracing its history. So every article you discuss in the Buganda Agreement, you should relate it to the Constitution. And when you're saying it is very particular, don't say that Article 1 led to the formation of Article 177, which creates districts. No. you give a statement that it is possible it could have been one of the reasons why we have Article 177 that creates districts. That you are also thinking, because we are tracing the history of the Constitution. So you don't say when you're very confident, this led to this. Are you sure? Maybe there were other events. You say, this article could have led to the formation of Article 177 in the Constitution, which provides for creation of districts. A good student can add and say which creation of districts, which also today are a means of easy administration. Okay, you continue and you finalize on your point. Then the other point, let's take Article 3. I am discussing the very important articles that at least if the question is open about Buganda Agreement, as you write it, these articles must appear, like it or not. Article 3 of the Buganda Agreement suggested that there Buganda was to be made or put at the same ranking with all the other provinces or with all the other regions, meaning that Buganda was at a bigger or greater stage compared to others. So they wanted to make sure that Buganda is at the same footing with all. After discussing that, you now give the reasons why they signed it. Why did the British want to put Buganda on the same level? Number one, they knew that if Buganda remained high with its superiority, supremacy, it would become a problem to them. So they want to make sure that they lower their pride and put it down to be at the same footing with all the rest. You even go ahead and explain, because of this, Buganda was not happy with this article. This is the only article where Buganda was not happy with it. That is why we see them later in 1960 writing a memorandum to the Queen of England, Her Majesty, telling her how they want to break away from Buganda. We see them in 1961 at 59 at Lancaster when they are asking for elections which were not called before, and that is how Obote becomes the Prime Minister. Yet initially it was Benny Chiwanuka who had led the people at Lancaster, but at Marlborough we see Obote rising as the Chief Minister. Why? Because Uganda all along was trying to come on top. They were fighting to be on top, and that is why actually we have most of the problems we got as a country at the time. Now, after explaining the meaning of that Article 3, you now tell us what does it look like in the Constitution today. Article 3 looks like which article in the Constitution? Article 21, which talks about everybody is free from discrimination, that everybody must be treated equally. Remember our Article 3 says that Buganda was to be put on the same footing with all the other regions, meaning they wanted an element of equality. There should be equality. So you relate Article 3 to Article 21 of the Constitution by saying Article 3 of Buganda Agreement could have compelled the framers of the Constitution to include Article 21 in the Constitution. Let's go to Article 6 of Buganda Agreement. I said I'm discussing articles which are very pertinent, that at least you must talk about them. Article 6 of the agreement, that for as long as Buganda and its king were royal and submissive to Her Majesty's government, then Her Majesty's government would recognize the king of Buganda as the native ruler of his people. Members, this Article 6 goes ahead and explains certain things. Number 2, Article 6 is the only article in the Buganda Agreement which is both social, political, and economic. It cuts across, because if you read down, they tell you that the Kabaka, now that one is social. For as long as you are submissive, we shall recognize you as a native ruler of our people. It is both social and cultural. But again, how does it become economical? In the same article 6, they say that the Kabaka would be given a salary of 1,000 British pound every month, and then his other people would also be given salaries. That all becomes economic. They go ahead and say that the Kabaka will have a gun salute, I think 10, where the Queen is, the Queen will have 20 of them. It also makes it a political kind of article. But most importantly, you now explain the beauty of that article, that the British wanted to have firm grip of Buganda by telling it, if you, the Baganda, and your king, you appreciate our rule, you respect us, you are submissive, you do whatever we tell you, then we are going to respect you. We shall make sure that your king is recognized in your area, of course by giving them gifts and other things. After discussing what the article meant to the British, we are discussing why the British included these articles is what you bring out of the exam. So after you have explained what the British aimed at to bring this article, you now relate it to the Constitution and say this article could have led to the formation of Article 246 that talks about instituting cultural leaders and all the prevailing articles, clauses of that article. Now, let's go to Article 15. Article 15 of the Constitution of the Buganda Agreement discussed the matter of land. Land was divided into Crown and Milo. Milo being the land made for all the Baganda, and Milo coming from the word mile, an English word mile. Land was given in miles. They would give you a mile and then everybody takes. So land was divided into Crown, and then the other members in that article, if you read, there was distribution of land to different categories of people. But Crown land remained for the British government, for the government protectorate to now handle all the other matters, as you will see when you handle order in council, when the pronouncements were made later in order in council. So why is land? Why are the British? The point is, after discussing Article 15 has divided land into Crown and Mile, the issue now is, why did the British focus on dividing land? Take this, I take this. Land is the greatest means of production. That for anything they wanted to do, they had to be in possession of land. So they wanted to control the means of production. That is what they are saying, Baganda, take the mile, and then you make sure you have a certificate, you own your mile, but then for us, we shall use this land, because that's the only way you can control, when all the means of production are in your control. That is why they decide on the article of land. Now, you relate the article of land to the Constitution. And Article 15 of Buganda Agreement could have led to the formation of Article 237 of the Constitution that provides for land ownership in this country. That we trace our history of land in Article 237 from Buganda Agreement, Article 15. Members, I am saying one word repeatedly. I am discussing articles that at least you must discuss them. The other article is Article 12 of the Buganda Agreement, which provided for the policies on taxation. The whites introduced taxation, hat and gun tax. Of course, the most important here is for us to discuss the gun tax. Why are they bringing the taxation of the gun and hat? Number one, they brought the gun tax because they feared further resistance. They wanted everybody who owns a gun to be known, such that they can limit the saturation of the guns amongst the people. It was for their safety. They were selfish about it. Then we shall be able to know which people owns the gun. So we are saying the idea of taxation could it have led to the formation of Article 152 of the Constitution that talks about taxation? Then, when you discuss Article 152 and 12, immediately in the next paragraph, the good student would include Article 2 of the Buganda Agreement immediately. Why? You include Article 2 simply because Article 2 says that Buganda will forfeit their position of collecting taxes to the British. That as the British came, they realized it was the Baganda who were known in the area. They allowed them for some time to be collecting the taxes, but said, you will forfeit that position to us. The moment we get known, we establish our rule, we shall take over that role of collecting tax, and then it will be the British who are collecting the taxes. The same Article 2 of Buganda Agreement, you relate it with Article 152. The issue is collection of taxes. Then, a good student still there would immediately come and discuss Article 4 of the Constitution, of Buganda Agreement, which says that the British, so the money that the Baganda have collected in Article 2, they would bring it and the British merge it together in one pool, and then they use it to develop the protectorate. What would remain would be given to the Baganda and shared amongst themselves. Article 4 of collecting and then you bring in one pool. Why? The British want to now control the finances. They want to be in charge of the finances, knowing that in this region, this amount was collected, we have it here. This one, we have it, such that they can administer the protectorate well when they have money. This formation of Article 4 of Buganda Agreement could have led to the formation of Article 153 of the Constitution, which talks about consolidated fund. Remember what we mean by consolidated fund. You see now here in Uganda, all the monies we pay in taxes, they are all put in one fund, which we call the consolidated fund. And that is where they get money to pay public servants, to pay everybody to work on the roads. That money is from the consolidated fund. If you read Article 128, Clause 5 of the Constitution, it talks about the independence of the judiciary. Further, Clause 5 said that the judiciary would get money from the consolidated fund and then they pay their salary. So that is how big the word consolidated fund is. Now, after discussing that, let me take you back to Article 1 of the Buganda Agreement that talked about demarcation of boundaries. A good student, after discussing Article 1, would come and discuss immediately Article 9 of Buganda Agreement, which says there will be demarcation of they'll create the 20 administrative units. Now, the reasons why they were created were for his administration to know what are they doing, what are they up to, how do you help them, how do you give them social services, how do we do this. That was the important region, and then you relate it to Article 177 of the Constitution. That is its equivalent. Then we can move now to Article 16 and Article 17. Article 16 talks about minerals. There will be, it is clear, they say the minerals will be in charge of the protectorate. If you own the land which had the minerals at the time, it will be in the charge of protectorate. Why? They want to control the resources. This is where the money is. This is that when you know that you have a farm control on an area, if you control its resources. Article 16, you can relate it to Article 244 of the Constitution, which talks about minerals. And if you read that article, if you can even quote it, that it says, all minerals shall be vested in the government of Uganda. It is a direct replica from what the Buganda Agreement was saying, and now we have it in the constitution. All minerals, all land which has minerals on the sea down, where down, it would be in charge of the government. And that is the same thing they talked about in Article 16 of the agreement. Then Article 17 talks about preservation of forestry. That they would also take on the forestries, environment, and be in charge of all the wetlands in Article 16, 17 of the Buganda Agreement. You directly relate it to Article 245 of the Constitution, which talks about natural environment, environment resources, how to control all those things. You relate them to Article 245 of the Constitution. Then from there, you discuss Article 22, which says that Article 22 says that the language in which this argument shall be interpreted is in both English and Uganda. For purposes of reading, it will be in both languages, English and Uganda. But for purposes of interpretation, it will be only English. Members note, they say, the reading of the agreement shall be in two languages, in Uganda and in English. But when it came to interpretation, it should only be English. Why? Because the British didn't know how to speak Luganda. So interpretation was now limited to English. Now, you relate Article 22 to Article 6 of the Constitution, which says there shall be an official language in the country. Is it possible that the framers of Article 6 could have picked the ideas from Article 22 of the language and then put it in our Constitution under Article 6? And then the other articles, 11, 10, 5, and others. There are very many articles, we can't compute them. We thank you so much for watching Law School Made Easy and Law School Made Easy 256. That is how we expect you to go about the question of Buganda agreement. Thank you so much. Stay tuned.